Holy cow, that was a good season finale for Picard. Let's dive into Season 1, full spoilers ahead, engage. Welcome to Durbania, I'm Durbin, and this is my spoiler talk review for Season 1 of Star Trek Picard. Can I just say right up front, if I say track, I am really sorry. It's not that I'm meaning to say track. Sometimes it's just, I guess, the way my brain works or my mouth works. I don't know which it is, but sometimes track might just come out. So if I could just ask for your forgiveness up front for that, we're good, out of the way, perfect. Picard was an excellent show, and if you're looking for something to watch during this quarantine, especially if you're a Trekkie. Now, I wouldn't say I'm a Trekkie, but I am a fan. I have seen Next Generation, I've seen all the James T. Kirk movies, I haven't seen the show, but I've seen the James T. Kirk movies, and I've seen the Next Generation movies. So that did give me a lot to appreciate in Picard, but I also think, like, if you don't have much of a history in this show pretty much does stand on its own pretty well. It does have a lot of nostalgia, but I still think you could enjoy it because Patrick Stewart and the cast, they do a good job. It's a rich story, so I think it's worth your time to check out during this time of quarantine, and I'm going to give this show an A-. One of the things that I absolutely loved about this series was just how complex and rich the story was. Even when they did nostalgia, they didn't just throw nostalgic stuff in there for the sake of giving you the warm fuzzies and nostalgia. For instance, when we see Will Riker and Deanna Troi, and we see where their life has been, it is so full of nostalgia. But it's also rich and complex because it adds to the story and carries the story forward. Because what we find out is Riker and Deanna, they had 2 kids. And one kid is dead now. And that kid is dead because synthetics were banned. If synthetics were not banned, what that kid had probably could have been cured because they could have used like a synthetic brain and figured out how to cure it, but they didn't, and so their child died. And so it adds to the complexity of the issues that this show is dealing with. So even when they threw in nostalgia, I feel like the nostalgia was nostalgia. It gave me the warm fuzzies as well as took the story and it carried it forward. Plus, it's always awesome to see Riker again. Number 1. Gosh, that dude is just so flippin' awesome. And the way he showed up in the season finale. And he's like, what, you think I'm just gonna sit in the woods making pizza just because I'm not gonna stop you from coming out here and doing this? Doesn't mean I don't have your back. I'm here. I got you. Like, Will Riker is just flippin' amazing, and it was so cool how they utilized him in this show. It was cool how they utilized Data in this show. So I'm getting ahead of myself, but the point is the way they took these things and gave you that taste of nostalgia, it also took that and moved the story forward and was a huge part of the story. What was really interesting is it showed you in this show how life just isn't perfect, and how life can be very reactionary, especially to fear. I mean, you got the Romulans, the Tal Shiar, and I think I'm saying the name of their group right, but basically, they react in fear. They're trying to postpone their Armageddon, which is the Destroyer coming, which is a synthetic life form that will eventually build a beacon and call for, like, these synthetic beings from like an eternal realm that will come down and destroy the organic universe to preserve synthetic life. So this was like their Armageddon. And so they wanted Starfleet to ban synthetics. So what did they do while the synthetics are building an armada to save Romulus from being destroyed by that supernova? While they're building that armada, the Tal Shiar went ahead and used that as an opportunity to infect the synthetics. They created this huge disaster on Mars, created a lot of fear, and the Federation got reactionary, and they banned synthetic life. Now think about that. What is the mission of the Federation? They're supposed to go and explore the universe. They're supposed to seek out unknown life. And now here they are banning an entire form of life simply because they feel like, well, we invented it, so we can ban it. But nonetheless, if you look at Data, if you look at androids, you look at synthetic life, it does take on a life of its own. But the fact that it could take on a life of its own, the fact that it did attack Mars the way that it did, filled them with fear. So in fear, they overreacted and they banned an entire form of life. So it created this whole complex issue. But then you have the synthetics. And Soji's journey, her character arc was so incredibly fascinating. Like, she didn't want to be the destroyer, but when she got back to her home planet and her memories pretty much came back, and she met her people, and like all of this started flowing back into her mind. It's like the reasoning behind the fact that the organics created them. The organics take away their choice. The reasoning makes sense as to why she would choose to be the destroyer, why she would choose to open the gate to let these things in and defend them and defend her people, to give them choice. And she felt like having this beacon, opening that doorway, that was her choice. It was her choice to defend her life, because her life is banned. If she's synthetic, and they all know she's synthetic, then her very existence is illegal. So the logic begins to make sense as to why she would even begin to do this. So they do a very good job of showing you we're all the bad guy and we're all the good guy. The synthetics, the Romulans, the Federation. It's so complex. It was interesting the way they dealt with these issues and the way they told this story. So I really enjoyed that whole thing about it. The other thing that was really cool was how inspirational they made Picard in this. Because one of the best things was the season finale, when he really goes to sacrifice his life for Soji because she's Data's daughter. He loves Data. He has a love for Data's daughter. He has a love for the synthetic life. I mean, he's really got the true heart of the Federation's mission in his heart. Like, he knows what it's for. And he was willing to lay his life down for his friends. And my favorite line in this finale was when he was talking to Dr. Agnes, and they're talking about, like these synthetic life forms on this planet, like, in terms of technology, they're way beyond us. But really, they're like children, and they really haven't had much guidance or teaching. And so Picard decides he's going to teach by example and lead by example. He's going to show them what life is for, why it's worth living. And he went to lay his life down for them. The fact that he chose that, the fact that he said that's what he was doing, the fact that his words and his actions lined up, and Soji saw that, and that's what informed her decision at the end, was absolutely incredible. Picard, even though he disagreed with the Federation and was at odds with them, was willing to put that stuff aside to work with the Federation to bring about the greater good. It was just cool to see what an inspirational figure he still is, and what a character arc he had, where we opened the beginning of the season where he's kind of an old man and lost his purpose, and he's just waiting to die. Until finally he meets Daj. And when she dies, he's got to go find Soji, and it gives him purpose, and it reminds him of what life is for. So you get to the end of the season, and since he's been reminded of why life is worth living, he wants to show them what life is really for and what life is really about. So all of that was just a really cool and very interesting arc, and very cool to see Picard return in this way. Now, one of the things that was kind of predictable was when we got to the synthetic planet, when the flowers were really cool, bringing down the ships, like, that was just really cool. But when we got to that planet and we see the golem, that Dr. Soong was building this golem, this kind of empty shell of an android body, because we knew there was something wrong in Picard's brain. It's like, okay, he's either going to die in battle, or he's going to die because of the brain thing, and his consciousness is going to be transferred to that body. And I was 110% right. That was 100% predictable. It sucked that it was that predictable, but the moment they introduced that in the second to last episode of the season, I knew Picard would die, and I knew his consciousness would be transferred to that body, and in that sense, we would see Picard live on. I called it, and I was right, and it sucked that it was that predictable. But what was awesome about it is what they did with it. Picard's death was full of emotion. It was full of meaning. It was incredible. It was well performed with all the actors around him. But when he died, as they took his consciousness and they were transferring it over to this golem, to this body they had built, he goes into this simulation with Data. And there's Data wearing the uniform he was wearing when he sacrificed his life in Star Trek Nemesis. Now, I haven't seen Nemesis in a long time. But the thing that I remember most about that movie, and that has stuck out with me the most about that movie, is Data sacrificing his life for Picard. And what was so cool about this conversation in this whole complex system was having Picard and Data talk. Picard getting to say, I love you, Data. Thank you, Data. Data getting to say pretty much the same thing back, but in Data fashion to Picard. It was such an emotional scene that I think well-rounded everything. Like, it took Star Trek Nemesis and gave it such an emotional, powerful ending. So, like, even though it was predictable that Picard's consciousness was going to be transferred, the way that they did it was just so good. It was well done, and I loved getting to see Data again in this way. It was just cool. Now, the other really cool thing about this complex simulation Picard found himself in and having a conversation with Data is Data, like, wanting to have the complete human experience. Like, if you watch Next Generation in the movies, his whole goal is to be more and more human. And in his mind, part of what makes humanity beautiful is mortality. It's the fact that our existence and our consciousness is finite. That makes every moment precious. He used the idea of a butterfly. A butterfly isn't a butterfly if it just goes on forever. And so he wanted his consciousness to end, and Picard to end his consciousness, so each moment would just have such beauty. On the one hand, I get that, and it makes perfect sense for the character of Data to have those thoughts and those feelings. On the other hand, I look at that philosophy and I go, God has promised us eternal life. When we come to Jesus, we get that eternal life. But that eternal life is going to be filled with meaning. It is going to go on forever. We are going to continue on and on and on. But God's love, not mortality and not death, those things aren't the thing that define our existence and give our existence meaning. It is God's love that defines our existence and gives our existence meaning. It is knowing God and knowing Him better. And we're going to have eternity to plunge into the never-ending depths of His love, finding ever more and more meaning to life, to love, to existence, as we get to know God better and better and better throughout eternity. Some of the other characters that were just awesome in this, Rafi, I hated that she kept calling Jean-Luc Picard JL. I don't know why that bugged me, but it did. I mean, he's Captain or he's Jean-Luc. He ain't JL, but she kept calling him JL. It bugged me, but you know what? Her character was fantastic. She was great. I like Chris, who was the pilot of the ship. He just was a great character. And one of the things that I liked about him was the actor himself just did a fantastic job, because the holograms were all like different versions of his personality. They all had different accents, and so all of that was hilarious. And we really got to see that guy shine as an actor, and it was just really well done. Elmore, I loved Elmore. He was such a great character, just wanting to be a warrior, having a worthy cause to fight for, and it was just cool to see him fight for the Borg, like the Borg that they were trying to set free. Like, it was a hopeless cause, so he joined with 7 of 9, and like, it was just cool to see the choices that he made. And oh man, when Picard died right before they had finished transferring his consciousness and stuff, when Rafi was mourning Picards' death, and Elmore just came and sat right beside her and just uncontrollably wept, I gotta tell you, as an actor, that's a hard thing to do. So that was fantastic. Like, I just thought that was so well done and added to that emotional impact of the death of Picard. And then how much cooler it is that Picard comes back to life in that golem body, and now he's a synthetic. So that also, I gotta go back to that. That brings that full circle. The fact that Soji asking Picard, am I real? The fact that Picard wakes up and says, am I real? Now he's a synthetic, and now that the ban is lifted, he's able to travel and go around and stuff. So it's interesting because now Picard himself is a synthetic. So all of that incredibly interesting and well done. Hugh, oh my gosh, if you remember Hugh from the Next Generation, what a sad but epic ending they gave Hugh in this show. I mean, that dude is going to be immortalized now, even more so, I think, in Star Trek canon and lore, just because of the way that he gave his life and the way he was killed. It was epic. It was well done. Narek kind of drove me nuts. Like, him and Soji together, I just never saw it. Granted, yeah, he was kind of the villain, but again, complex issue, because we saw the reasoning behind why he was doing what he was doing. But then, by the end, we see him team up with our crew. So it does kind of give us those mixed feelings, and I think it just added to the depth of the character. So, like, that was well done, and that was pretty interesting, and I enjoyed that, but it drove me nuts every time he and Soji were together. Like, I don't know. Maybe it was his eyebrows. There was just something about him. I was like, this is not working for me. So I was glad that ended when it did. Dr. Agnes was such a fascinating character to me. She started so passionate, so naive, and then you had that, like, Romulan Federation traitor lady come and do the mind connection with her and show her the Armageddon, which then kind of freaked her out, made her fearful. Then she killed Dr. Bruce Maddox, the man she loved, and just the pain she was in because of that. And yet, she managed to come back from it. She managed to find the strength to come back and be such a powerful character. I mean, when we get back to the planet of the synthetics, and I thought she was really going to accept that role as mother because her whole life's work was this. But it was really cool to see her team up with Picard. So, like, it was just really cool to see her character transformation and how strong of a character she really became throughout the season. 7 of 9 was just a really, really cool character. I have not seen Star Trek Voyager. It's one of the shows that I plan to get into now after I finish Deep Space Nine, so I'm looking forward to getting into that. But, like, I thought she was awesome. And because of her alone, I have more interest now in going into Star Trek Voyager. One of the coolest scenes was when she became a Borg queen temporarily. There was a moment when she became the Borg queen, I didn't think she's gonna let go of the power, but she did. I'm so glad that she let go of that power. But it was a really, really cool moment and just really cool to get to know her character. There's so much more that could be said about this. I'm giving this show an A-. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a fantastic continuation of Jean-Luc Picard's story, picking up where we left off, where we last saw him with Star Trek Nemesis, carrying it forward to the event that created the parallel timeline, which has Chris Pine as Captain Kirk, but following our prime timeline. So we're seeing what happened with Picard and Will Riker and our next generation characters after Romulus was destroyed. I just feel like this did a great job with all of those things. It handled it so well. It was a rich and complex story. A-. What did you think of this show? Would you go higher? Would you go lower with your grade? Let's talk about that in the comments. While you're there, hit that subscribe button to become a Durbanian and hit that bell by the subscribe button so you're notified the next time I do a movie review, ranking video, theological analysis, or anything else I do here. I'm Durbin. Thanks for checking out Durbania.